This is a production of Cornell University.
So it's a little bit of an experimental lecture. It's the first time I'm talking about blockchain and food security, but it's something I started working my way into about 6-8 months ago. And the more I looked into it, the more I got absolutely excited and imagination got going. What I want to do in the next 41 minutes is, with 75 slides, so bear with me, is to provide you a broad, basic understanding of what blockchain is and what it isn't, get you excited with lots of applications that are growing up everywhere from all directions, and then end up with some fundamental questions I think that we will need to, we as a society, but also I think as scientists will need to think about and grapple with. So I want to dispel some myths, give you a few essential elements that I think are really important to understand blockchain, give you a plethora of current applications. I'll go through very quickly, including on food, agriculture, and so forth, and philanthropy. And then, as I said, some questions, and hopefully we'll have a good discussion. First of all, 5 myths. Blockchain is all about Bitcoin. Well, no. Bitcoin, you've heard about it, price went up, price crashed, price goes up again. It's just one application. But Bitcoin, when Bitcoin started, it has been a seismic shift in the way computers, in fact, can talk to each other and execute programs. And that's what makes this so exciting. Another myth is Bitcoin uses more electricity than Denmark. That may be not necessarily be a myth, but the point is it's not really a problem because Bitcoin is just the first application, and there are already so many follow-on innovations that are coming that radically change the business model and that use very, very little electricity or computing power for the same transactions. I'll give some examples on that. The value of cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, currency encrypted in the blockchain, is fictitious, it's imaginary, it has no relationship to reality. Well, that may be true, but it's basically about the use of these tokens, and I'll come back later to what the token and the cryptocurrency is. Yes, there is a certain truth to that, but there can also be a direct link with a fiat currency, there could be, or there could be a direct link with something solid, something real, like your house. Just on the value, Amazon, you wished you had invested, or your parents had invested, even $10 only, or $100, and look where it is now. We often forget that many companies that were completely changing the paradigm, look at the share price at the .com bubble of Amazon. Well, many people lost complete confidence. This is not going to work, this whole, well, same with Bitcoin. It's gone up, it's come down, it's going up again. It's absolutely nothing unusual what we are seeing today to what we are familiar with historically with any new paradigm shifts in technologies. Amazon as an example of that. We also hear that cryptocurrencies enable criminal activities, money laundering, and so forth. Yes, they can, and yes, there are safeguards that are being implemented through regulations, but nothing unusual. You can take a suitcase of cash and pay somebody to do something bad for you. So it just makes this easier on the blockchain. But in essence, it's nothing unusual about a tool that you can use for dual purposes. Perhaps over time, blockchain will be, or cryptocurrencies, will be the least likely ones to be used for criminal activities. But that's a subject that would take us too far to go into why I think that is. Then Satoshi Nakamoto, you may have heard of him. He is, or her, or she, or they are the ones who wrote a white paper that became Bitcoin. A white paper is to describe the system. It was absolutely a watershed moment in this area, but whoever that person or persons are, we don't know who he, she is, stood on the shoulders of giants. There were many precursor technologies that were essential to enable his groundbreaking or her groundbreaking invention of Bitcoin. And of course, others, as you see, Ethereum, Hashgraph, are becoming almost as, if not even more, game changer than Bitcoin itself. So what is blockchain? I'm using blockchain and distributed ledger technology synonymously. They're not quite necessarily the same. They can be, but you hear distributed ledger or blockchain. For all practical purposes, it's the same. And it's all about ledgers, lists. In fact, ancient from Giza, from the Pyramid of Giza. It's a list of items. You're familiar with your lab notebooks. That's, in fact, a ledger. The date, what you did, what came out of it, how you did it, what you think about it. It's a ledger. Your bank account, a ledger. How much you have, how much you spent, where it went, etc. In fact, it started with your life. When your mother gave birth, the hospital wrote down in a ledger the date, the time, the name, the parents. It's a ledger. Now, if you lose your birth certificate, you have a little problem. In future, this will all be on the blockchain. You can no longer lose it. So basically, that's it. That's the blockchain. It's a ledger. It's just distributed on the internet. Sorry, distributed across computers. So we're familiar with the centralized nature of the internet. You go shopping on Amazon.com. To take the same example, you go to a central Amazon server in the cloud, but still it's an Amazon-owned server, and transactions happen between you and a third party and your credit card. Well, Amazon is really decentralized now. They have many servers, cloud servers all over, but it's still owned by them. What is different with blockchain? It's distributed. So there's no more central authority. If one of them gets corrupted, gets infected, is operated by a criminal gang, or is suddenly inoperative because the country closes off the firewall, the system is resilient and continues happily to live thereafter, up to a certain point. And that's the point. And this is the Byzantine general's problem. This alone would take an hour's lecture, but in a nutshell, what blockchain does, it solves this particular problem. Let's assume you have, in this case, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 generals with their own armies surrounding Byzantine city. They can't communicate by radio. 3,000 years ago, that wasn't invented. So they have to send messengers to the others. At what time, on what date will we attack, and are you in or not? Do you agree? And if everybody agrees on that particular time and date, they all attack and they are bound to take over the city. If that's not the case, if one of them fails or lies or is a spy, then if one general or one army doesn't make it, they will all get killed. So how do you solve this problem when all you can do is send a message to others that says, I'm going to attack, do you agree? Messenger comes back, yes, I agree. Well, you don't know if that general is lying. What about if that general sends a different message to somebody else? And that's one of the big problems in computers, databases, security, since the invention of the internet, in fact. What blockchain, what Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto did solve this problem. Others tried before with elements of it, but the real breakthrough was again Bitcoin. And it's cryptographically solved, mathematically solved. I will leave it at that at the moment. And the point that I said earlier, up to a point, is if more than 1/3 of the generals are spies, then you're out of luck. So there's a limit to how many can be bad guys. I mean, if you're in the city, of course, the spy is a good guy, but for all practical purposes, if you want to attack, you can only do with 1/3 or less that are bad guys. Otherwise, the system really doesn't work. But that's a fairly formidable threshold, especially when you have thousands or hundreds of thousands of computers around one blockchain. Then it becomes pretty nearly impossible, not completely impossible, but nearly. So that's an essential concept that has been solved. You just have to take my word for it. Now, another concept to understand is the hash. So you see these long strings of numbers and letters that represent underlying data. And many of you in the DNA sequencing, you're familiar with how do you compare DNA sequences? Well, not by comparing billions of pairs, but by using hash. So a hash is a series of letters, numbers, that represents a series of DNA database, DNA CGTAC. So the example here is John Smith. There's a hash function, and John Smith is 02. So 02 represents John Smith. But you can't deduct from knowing 02 that it's John Smith. For that, you need the cryptographic keys. And so there can never be a hash that is identical. If there's another John Smith, that John Smith, because it's uploaded on a different time, different place, gets a different hash. All that is embedded in the function. And so big stuff becomes much smaller and can be transmitted through the internet very, very fast in nanoseconds. Please. So there are several ways of doing this with public and private keys. Some of you may be familiar with that if you have an RSA stick or so. But yes, there's a direct function because the 02 cannot represent anything else but John Smith. But you need the entire key, the public and the private, to come back to that. Hence, this is one layer of security which makes blockchain enormously hacker-proof. So far, there have been no hacks of exchanges, yes, but that's different to the blockchain itself having been hacked. So there's no known hacking that has yet occurred and not likely to occur in the near future. Something else to understand very briefly is the consensus. How do all these nodes, all these computers, come to a consensus? Think of it the following way. You give birth to John Smith in the hospital. That gets into the ledger and then distributed to all the computers. And that John Smith gets a hash. How do all the computers, the thousands or hundreds of thousands of computers, agree that this is really the right hash for this John Smith? Well, either the computers do some proof of work, a lot of computations, mathematical computation, hence power consumption, or there is a proof of stake where if they have a certain stake in a particular platform, they are the ones that solve it, that solve certain mathematical cryptographic problems, and then validate that, yes, this entry is the right one, and everybody then agrees that this is, and knows that this is the only John Smith born by these parents in that hospital at that time. Because when you have databases, especially when they are distributed, you can't have one that is slightly different to the other. Those who use SharePoint here, Cornell, to upload your data, sometimes you have synchronization errors. That's really the issue here, that again, the blockchain solves by making it impossible that there's a synchronization error. Next one is what I mentioned over lunch with the students. There are two types of blockchains. And I'm soon ending with the key concepts. One is permissionless. So you can use it. You don't need any accreditation. You can buy Bitcoins, trade with Bitcoins. Doesn't matter. And there are lots of permissioned ones where you need an account. You need to be accredited. You need to be allowed to use it. You need to abide by the rules. And if not, you're thrown out or pay penalties and so forth. So these two systems are both can exist. Ethereum is in fact both, depending on the application. And the state of the technology is maybe early 90s, mid 90s, when the World Wide Web just started. Many of you weren't born by that time. You have no idea how life was before the internet. We had to go to an actual library and look up cards and go and look for books to get information. So we are early in that development, and who knows what the future holds. And that's part of the fascinating thing about it, what the future could hold. The last concept is smart contracts. So smart contracts are nothing else but an algorithm, again, a what-if-then function, a computer program that says, if I sell you through a blockchain a book, you give me Bitcoins or whatever, and let's say it's a permissioned application where we both are, we may not know who you are, who each other is, but we are on that blockchain, on that application. And if you don't upload within, let's say, 24 hours, proof of shipment of the book that I bought, or that I, whichever way around, then the smart contract says, oh, he did not upload on time, therefore he is going to refund twice the amount that the other one paid. That's a simple what-if function. And so you can embed those functions, and dispute resolution, everything can be written in code that accompanies certain transactions. Just think of buying a house. How long does it take? A couple of months? You put money in escrow, you get title search, you get documents certified by lawyers, a mortgage, pay down, this and that. It takes ages and meetings, and lots of money goes to lots of middlemen and middlewomen. Sorry. Well, with blockchain, and the first houses have been sold on a blockchain, this is automated. It takes a couple of hours. Of course, somebody has to upload the title and certify that the original title that was uploaded on the blockchain is authentic. So that first step needs to be done once. But if there's a lien on the house, if there's a mortgage, if there's something wrong with it, it's all on the blockchain, can be verified by the buyer. And if something were wrong, the smart contract would then take care of some penalties in whatever way that particular blockchain has written the code. So it takes a couple of minutes or a couple of hours, and all is automatic. Obviously, not everybody likes this. Yeah, but Amazon wasn't liked by bookstores, and it changes the world. So it's not whether or not it's liked, but how fast will new minds, you, come up with new applications, like in plant breeding, for example, that may make certain technologies that we know today completely obsolete. So a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds on summary. It's decentralized, that's the key, and trusted. So you don't need to trust a particular computer or particular player, but the system is the one that gives trust. You have trust in your credit card bank that issued your credit card. You put your money there. You have trust implicit. Well, this is now done online, where this did not exist before blockchain. Okay, how does it work? Very briefly, you have a smartphone, for example. You request a transaction. It goes into that cyberspace there with these computers doing their number crunching. They all come up with a consensus, remember? Different ways, there are many different ways of consensus. I only gave two, proof of stake, proof of work. And then in the end, it's a proof transaction. It goes into the block and it's there forever. It can never, ever be changed again. So it's tamper-proof. You can't later change forge a document. And you get confirmation. The other person gets confirmation on their smartphone within minutes or seconds, depending on the system you use. Very last concept to briefly touch on is I used words coins, tokens, and cryptocurrencies so far. It's actually simple, the difference, but actually very, very difficult in practice because there's so much overlap of the two concepts. Coins or cryptocurrencies are money. It's money in the cyberspace that may or may not relate to something real. Dollars or houses. And tokens. Tokens are more used in permission chains for transactions. And most tokens have to be purchased with coins. I think in 1 minute, that's as good a definition I can give of the two. For practical purposes, think of the coins more like money and the tokens more like fungible ways of transacting things. Your airline miles, it's fungible. So you may get a token in the future and you can use it for airline miles or to buy flowers for your loved ones. So where do we stand today? I said it's really early, but we're already in the version 5 probably of blockchain, depending on whom you agree, with whom you agree. I think Bitcoin got the whole financial industry, fintech, really going. Ethereum, a 20-year-old guy, started that with smart contracts. It's now the most ubiquitous way of doing blockchains. DApps, I won't touch on it today. It has now seen early industrial use applications. And lo and behold, new technologies are invented, Hashgraph, that may once again revolutionize. I won't dwell into it, but I can strongly urge you to look at this description by the inventor of it. It's an absolutely beautiful new type of blockchain, if you want, Hashgraph. It's not quite blockchain. The difference is Bitcoin, you have a couple of thousand transactions every 5 to 10 minutes. With Hashgraph, you can have 250,000 and more per second, and then you can layer them and have 500,000, 1 million, 10 million transactions per second. So think of Visa processing, your credit card processing, all of that. It's already being developed by Hashgraph, by Swirl, the company, for Visa, in order, they have hundreds of thousands of transactions a second, where this will all eventually be done paperless on the blockchain. The terminals in the shop, you won't even notice the difference. You may one day just put your smartphone there, as you do with Wallet Pay, Apple Pay, and it will all be done by blockchain. So let's move on to current 23 minutes, and I'm at, wow, 1 minute ahead of time. Not bad. So we'll get through the 75 slides, don't worry, because the next ones will be very fast. So these are the different areas I'm going to cover very quickly, the row on the left, and then spend a bit more time on the food production and food distribution. So where can you buy stuff using cryptocurrencies or coins or altcoins? Altcoins, by the way, are normally referring to not being Bitcoin. Well, these are just some examples, and there are hundreds more. You can buy pizza, you can buy beer, you can buy a flight into space on Virgin Galactic with Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. And I will talk about Open Bazaar in a minute. But the first one I want to show is Switzerland. I'm from Switzerland, so you can already buy rail tickets using Bitcoin. The ID, you see the ID here? That's all you need. With your application, you take the photograph, like a barcode, just the ID, and you buy your train ticket with Bitcoin. And that already exists since 2016. So we are quite ahead of time. Actually, I find this pretty neat. Open Bazaar was on my list. Open Bazaar is something, a permission blockchain. I won't say this anymore because most of the applications are. You set up an account, you get accredited, you buy tokens, and I now sell my book on Open Bazaar. Somebody on the other side of the world can buy them. No transaction fees with foreign currencies, nothing in the way I described earlier with the book. There is a way of doing that seamlessly. This could potentially disrupt Amazon's business model. Amazon, when I sell a book on Amazon and I'm selling some through a non-profit, they take 45% of the sale price. And if you're a company, take 55%. Well, here it'll be a fraction of that. I think the biggest applications today, industrial scale, is in the supply chain management that are enormously cumbersome. Just think of shipping. Microsoft and Maersk have developed already a prototype where all the documentation for insurance, for cross-border, for destinations, content, taxation, everything is on the blockchain. Everything is executed automatically. The container arrives in the port, scan. The truck loads it, scan. Goes through custom, scan. Ends up in Walmart, scan. You buy it, scan, and that's it. An example of some insurance companies in Asia tried across 8 jurisdictions. If you have insurance across countries, it's enormously paper and regulatory intensive. And so many checks and double checks and putting it into a database and another company, a different database. And it takes about 4 months to settle an insurance claim between Hong Kong and the Philippines. So the insurer in Hong Kong issues a policy to a company in the Philippines. If there's an incident, it takes 4 months. With that blockchain prototype that they did, it took 4 hours. Quite a few people will lose their jobs. Those that have to check and put paper in, photocopy, scan, classify, and so forth. The benefit is, of course, that everything will be faster and essentially foolproof, or as foolproof as the blockchain's applications. One of the most advanced is Everledger for diamonds. So from the point of mining, photographed, all the way to the sale on your wedding ring, all on blockchain. There are millions of diamonds already. If they're cut, that gets recorded in the blockchain. And just a few numbers on fraud prevention. 45 billion are estimated in the diamond industry to be lost to fraud. Most of that can be prevented with blockchain. Most fraudulent claims go undetected. And I rest my case there. So in future, you'll buy the wedding ring diamond, you will know the miner, you'll see the face on your phone, on your smartphone, you will know that it's not a blood diamond. Distributed cloud storage, another application. You can rent out your computer, your laptop, for others to store their files if you have space left, and make some money along that way. You can't read, again, encrypted, cryptographically, essentially foolproof. BitTorrent, those that are familiar with BitTorrent, similar system to BitTorrent. So the same is in many different computers. If one is down, you still have access to your files. Here's what fintech, I think the conclusion on fintech is somebody from Barclays high up. Our belief at Barclays is that blockchain is a fundamental part of the new operating system for the planet. So when you hear that central banks and banks are against Bitcoin and blockchain, well, yes, until they figured out that they could probably benefit from it as well. This will fundamentally transform our way of interacting with each other at every level of life. Arcade City will take over Uber maybe one day. Uber takes quite a cut, central authority again. Arcade City, you have drivers, you, me, again, permission blockchain, and a fraction of the cost to me or to you, the rider, will completely change the way we do transport. That's just for taxi type of transports. Think of parcels, think of distribution of the postal system. Mind-boggling if you just dare to think of the potential implications. Renting, it's just finished its ICO. Rentberry, that's for long-term rentals. Airbnb will be history maybe one day. Let's look at some medical applications. Ambrosis, tracking the origin of the medicines all the way to bedside, from production to bedside. Think of what it means for vaccines, where every storage has been monitored. Was it too long at room temperature, etc. Fraudulent medicines, fakes, and so forth. A tremendous technology to all but eliminate that completely. Another medical application is, or health research application is, a professor at MIT just started recently a blockchain where you put up your DNA. You have it sequenced, gets on the blockchain, and if companies come and study your DNA or compare or fish out certain sequences, you actually get paid per view, so to speak, with tokens. Yeah. GEM, managing medical records. It's just one of many that are already starting. This will revolutionize the health industry. Just that fact alone. And then imagine what you could do if you superimpose AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, having access to some of those medical records. You get tokens, by the way, if they pay per view along the way. They don't know who you are, but now suddenly you have everybody who's on that blockchain, their medical records could now be mined for science. A new world. You can pay casinos now, you can gamble on the blockchain with an advantage. It's not stacked against you. You go to gamble, it's always stacked against you, the odds. The house always wins at the end of the day. Not here, it's zero. That's why the zero coin. They still make a little bit of money with the transactions, and that's it. So it's fair gambling. I don't suggest you try it out. I'm just giving you examples, but you can then think further what this could mean for democracy. Think about that when you walk home. Okay, governments. That brings me to governments. Just a few. Dubai, they want to get the whole state, everything on blockchain. Estonia, all public records, your identities on blockchain. South Korea, all the transportation will be managed on blockchain. The UK is still studying whether they should do pensions, payments of pensions. Again, fraud prevention. And then you have other interesting applications. Voting one day will be on the blockchain, inevitable. And guess what? 2 days ago, Arizona passed a bill to allow tax payments with Bitcoin. And this is not a hoax. So one day, here's what will happen. You will buy something at Green Star or Wegmans. It will already, the blockchain for which you bought it, will deduct all the right taxes, instantly almost transfer the taxes to the right players. Your income from Cornell or from wherever will come through the blockchain. And the smart contracts associated with that blockchain will know how much taxes you are owed to pay to whom, by when, will all be automated. HR block, goodbye. Let's go into some fun stuff, philanthropy. BitGive, look it up. It's a way to know exactly what you're giving, where it ended up with, to whom, by when, at what time. Crowdfunding on the blockchain. Kickstarter is history. This will be the future. This developed by the Gates Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to enable the 2-point-some billion people that are not banking to have wallets and be able to actually have money in their pockets and not to have to walk to another village with cash for a transaction. So it's to empower the poor. Let's come to some agricultural applications. And there's so many, I didn't know which ones to choose. So I selected a few random ones, some for fun, some because I think they are groundbreaking in their technologies. This one I've put first because I'm still trying to get my head around what exactly their business model is, but it looks darn promising. That's all I can say. This one is a bit more advanced. From the Netherlands, out of Wageningen, you can, when you go to Green Star, you can know exactly the provenance of each individual honey. Of course, you can also use it for whiskey and know which island, which islet, which farmer milled did the rye and all that, and where it was distilled. You will all see that on the blockchain one day. This probably is another one that is really neat, permissioned, of course. You need to have an account. But what they do is they already have certain certifications that they provide. It's audited and so forth. It will reduce the cost of producing a certified, let's say, organic, trademarked products where you have collective marks for quality. This will be the only way things will be sold in the future. Think of it for developing countries. Suddenly it's becoming easier for a developing country farmer to participate because the transaction costs here are minuscule compared to what they used to be using banks and shippers and importers and exporters and storage and so forth, all the middlemen. Block grain in Australia, where payments are happening almost instantaneously, again, on quality, a variant of the above. Beef ledger, you know, it's real beef. I don't know what it means because, but watch this space, there will be vegan. And I did, when I Googled and tried to find vegan blockchains, I couldn't find any, except one that didn't take off. But I found an interesting blog, and the title was "Cryptocurrencies Are Turning Me Vegan." I just thought it was fun. Couple of more minutes. Global cannabis chain. Here you see all the different functions that this chain is integrating. Taxation, of course, as well. Provenance, fishermen in Indonesia, you buy, you order fish on the plate tonight for dinner. On the menu is the barcode. You scan it, you see the fisherman, you see the route he or she took, when it was fished, how it was transported, how much the fisherman got. Every stage, you know how much they got paid. And if you want, you add a tip for the fisherman at the end of your meal if the fish was good. Seriously. And that provenance has it now in many different sectors. So it's all about tracing, verification, and trust. They claim to be the blockchain of food. As I'm saying, there are many of those starting. Many will fail. Some will become the ubiquitous Amazons.com. And one day, the question will be, how will the different blockchains interoperate? What is the interoperability of the different blockchains? And the inventor of Ethereum is writing a white paper as we speak and promises to come up with a solution. Just to stretch your mind a little bit more, Monsanto paid over $1 billion for climate.com, climate data. Now think of integrating that information with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and blockchain. I'm just putting that out to stretch your minds. This is why Monsanto paid $1 billion for the data. And then there are lots on IP, but that would be a subject for another talk. Let's come back to a few forward-looking questions. What is the future price of Bitcoin? I don't know. All I can say is now is a good time to sell, and I'll buy them. Okay, joke apart. What does the future hold at the interface of distributed ledger technology or blockchain and artificial intelligence? I've alluded to it a few times. Just think of breeding, phenotype, screening, putting all that stuff on blockchain and having a wheat breeder at the other side of the world and artificial intelligence that makes sense of all that data that comes together, that no longer sits in God knows what different databases and Singer or whatever it's called. I don't know if that still exists. Diversity trust, what is it called for the DNA? All of that will be on blockchain, and with artificial intelligence, it will revolutionize breeding like I think molecular genetics has done. By when will blockchain make Airbnb and Uber obsolete? I think the writing is on the wall. Will blockchain applications be regulated as public goods? They have the quality of a perfect public good, non-rivalry in consumption, and non-excludable. At least they're not the permissionless. So that alone would be a couple of hours to discuss. Or will blockchain enable an Orwellian future where the government controls everything from your birth certificate to your income, to your taxes, to your transportation? You can't transport unless you have a part of a blockchain. And if for some reason they don't like you or think you should be incarcerated, they turn off the switch and you can't move anymore. So the very technology, Bitcoin, that was supposed to be completely decentralized, make governments and central banks obsolete and take away their power, could one day be turned against them. Just putting out food for thought. And of course, the question for the discussion, 42 minutes exactly. Can we harness our institutions, your minds, to actually use blockchain for all the good applications, bring different values, different cultures together around a system that we can all understand, address the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations? That's for evening lecture, a summary of the benefits. I just want to spend 30 seconds on the last one, on governance, with two examples. One is, what is the parallel to the executive? It's the nodes. The judiciary is the miners that make sure that come to a consensus. The legislature is, in fact, the system that was built, the platform itself, and then we have all the users. But you also have fundamental questions how blockchain is going to fundamentally change the governance of corporations because it changes the power structure and who has power. This professor, by the way, at New York University is fantastic, one of the world authorities on the economics of blockchain. And that's it. Here's a farmer, sweet potato farmer in the Red River Delta in outside Hanoi. I haven't asked her what she thinks of blockchain, but that's worth a discussion.
I understand how the blockchain works very efficiently. We have potentially really light values, you know, the key value pairing and everything. You know, like keeping track of I want to back to $10. That's a very lightweight value. If I want to attach my key a multi-megabyte picture and reconcile that across the system or gigabyte picture, how does the blockchain work when you have a very large, heavy key, or value, sorry.
Yeah, like everything related to your house.
Yeah, well, even that unless you start to do all the images and everything.
Yeah, the builders, the materials that were used in the building, in the construction, the paints when it was renovated, everything. But that's real. Actually, that application exists today, and it has been solved. And it's been solved by you don't need to transfer all the information all the time. That's how it's solved.
But you are still reconciling it across large numbers of nodes.
Right. So you have to.
That takes way through
Not much. It's nanoseconds. A couple of backs and forths.
petabytes of data and the
Well, Bitcoin is what, 10, 12 megabytes per block. Ethereum makes transactions much faster. Hashgraph is kilobytes for the same amount, where what you need to transfer all the time is proof that you are who you claim you are and that you want to execute a certain transaction that is a certain specified and allowed transaction, and that the system then allows you to do the transaction and transfer ownership, title, or whatever it is. That's where the transactions take place. The underlying data, you don't need to transfer all the time. Yes, because you have it transferred once and it's there. Once, the first time. That's why the blockchain is immutable, unchangeable. Once it's in a block, it's unchangeable. Then that's it. It stays there. Look at all the data centers of Amazon.com. Again, to pick on Amazon. I mean, terabytes or flops, I don't even know what the terminology is for the amount of storage. How much data goes across every nanosecond? This is not a problem. No, the energy goes into useless mathematical processing actually for Bitcoin. Because you have it centralized. With blockchain, you will use less energy to do the same function.
So the actual picture of the fish will take several megabytes, like quality, and that's what I think. That picture to be shown on the buyer side.
But it'll be transferred once, and then it's locally in one computer, and you can access it. It's immutable. It's associated with a particular code or hash, and when I look up that hash, I can see what I want to see and get that from the blockchain. I don't need to get it from all the million computers, only one. Other questions?
How is this going to work in a setting like this where you're not connected to them?
I hope you guys will come up with those answers and your minds will solve that. Well, I think the mojo, the one that I mentioned from Gates Foundation, which they developed 3 years ago, by the way, or 4, is in fact intended to enable, to develop the infrastructure needed precisely to connect those. That's the intent.
What's the antidote for the Orwellian future? I feel it is descending upon us every day. Yeah. So I guess the concern is going to always be that is a co-optable system. And we can look around the world and see many places where such a system is being put in place that appears socially not acceptable, blocked access to lots of things. So it seems like the Orwellian potential is significant and immediate.
Yeah, I'm not sure how immediate. It's relative, of course, but I mean, it takes us to another subject, which is what is the limit of democracy? These two are very closely related. What do we allow our governments to actually do?
Well, maybe how do we keep our other than show up at community assemblies and try to use a vote?
So the same blockchain can be used either to curb that power and make it really democratic, or to bring that Orwellian future, and the choice will be ours.
Just similar to that, what would be what prevents incorrect or false information getting into it? You need to organic coffee, and I stuck in 50 bags of pesticide-laced stuff in my shipment, and I said, get somebody to check it and go through, and it's
So there was one slide on food safety, the cost of false meat, for example, recalls with blockchain, because you know the provenance and every step and wherever it was. You can't just add 50 more pounds because that will be logged at the point of origin. But yes, you can cheat, but you will be on a permission blockchain. So you will have to have been accredited to use it. And if you play bad once, there will be consequences. So is it completely foolproof? No. But take the diamond, you take the picture of the diamond. Once that picture, and assuming it's not from a blood diamond, but taken from somewhere else and then photographed here, those things are always possible. But I think the blockchain reduces and the accreditation and the auditing that will go with it, that goes with it, reduces that potential significantly. It's not completely, it doesn't eliminate, doesn't put everybody, doesn't make everybody honest overnight. Any more questions, you can contact me here. And just for my own honesty, credits of some of the images I downloaded from the internet.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.